guys, welcome to another webinar. So today I'll be doing the webinar. My name is Ashane. I'm from Metana, and I am part of the job camp here at Metana as well as the content creation team here at Metana as well. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that's not pretty much talked about in like an open forum as much as I would like it as a recruiter. Right, so we're going to be talking about open source contributions and specifically how you can use that to land jobs much faster and with way less effort, if I do say so. So this session will be especially useful to anyone who's like an undergraduate currently in university looking for like internships or something like that, or if you are a person switching careers, maybe you're like a salesman who's trying to get into tech, maybe a full stack developer or even something like a Web3 developer. So if you're any one of those people, or necessarily if you're a software developer looking to get hired, what we're going to be talking about today is going to be really helpful for you. It's essentially going to be much better than applying on a mass scale, is what I can tell you. Now, one disclaimer that I have to tell you is this session is not going to teach you how to use GitHub. This is not going to be a technical session. This is going to be how you can use contributing to stuff on GitHub to get hired. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Maybe in a later video we can talk about how you can use GitHub and everything, but for now we're going to be talking about how you can use this to get hired, right? So let's look at our agenda for today. We're first going to talk about what open source is in general, because any new person to this industry might be watching and I want them to understand exactly what open source contributing open source projects are. And I'll also then show you where you can find these open source projects, how and what to do in order to contribute to them, as well as going into the best practices for contributing, right? So those three things are going to be really important because at the end of the day, you're looking to get hired. You want to do the best job possible, right? And then we'll talk about whether it's worth it or not. And finally, the most important thing of the session and what everyone watching can take away, how you can use this to actually get hired, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. So now let's talk about what open source is. Now, maybe many of you guys who's watching this probably have used an open source project's application at some point in their life, right? So what open source means is any project which has its source code completely out there in the public, right? So you can view the source code. It's freely made available to anyone that can essentially, that means that you can view it, you can modify it, you can distribute it. Essentially, these applications that are open source are run by the community. Like, for example, if you look at Adobe, right? That's a closed source project. You or I don't have access to the source code, meaning all the updates that get put onto these applications, all the new features, everything is decided by the company, that is Adobe, rather than the people who are using these projects. But when it comes to open source projects, you and I who use those projects, we have a say in like what these projects are going to be. We are the people who essentially decide what the next update is going to be, what new features that are going to be added. And as a result of this, all of these open source projects are free. Now, when it comes to Adobe, you probably have to pay like $230 every month just to use a single app or something like that. But all the other open source versions of those applications are completely free, and it's completely legal to use them. And that's essentially the beauty of open source projects. Now, some very popular open source applications that are out there is like VLC Media Player. If you have used VLC Media Player in any point of your life, that's an open source project. It's not closed sourced. The community is the one people who actually build it. Then if you've done any 3D modeling, Blender is an industry giant when it comes to animation. I mean, recently, last year, a movie called Flow that was made using Blender, fully used using Blender, won an Oscar. So definitely an open source win for open source projects, if I do say so. And also something like Mozilla Firefox, which is a completely open source browser. So that's essentially what open source is. Now, where can you find open source projects and how can you contribute to them? Well, the best answer for that is going to be GitHub. Now, a disclaimer is GitHub isn't the only place where you can find open source contribution projects. There are many other places where you can find them, but the purposes of today is to actually get hired using open source contribution, right? So for that, the best place is going to be GitHub. GitHub, if you do not know, is a version controlling system that is hosted on the web so that it allows people from all across the globe to collaborate on the same code at essentially like the same time, right? So that's GitHub. Now, any repository that you put on GitHub, which is public, is considered an open source project. So for example, if you have your final year assignment on GitHub on your repository pages, that is essentially an open source project. So anyone out there on the internet can come and contribute to your final year project assignment. And that's essentially what contributing is. But the thing is, if you want to get hired, contributing to any and all repositories is not going to be doing you any favors. The reason is people aren't going to recognize these projects. They're not going to be able to recognize what this repository is. And that's just it, right? So you want whatever contributions you make to be noticed, to be recognizable. That's the main point of contributing to get hired. But contributing to any repository is perfectly fine in which case where you want to actually learn something, right? Or you want to get those green dots on GitHub. If you don't know what the green dots are, essentially in your GitHub profile, you have this calendar, right? So this calendar has all the dates, and each one of the dates is a dot that ranges from transparent to green. The greener the dot is, it shows people that you are active on GitHub on that particular day. Now, when it comes to recruiters who are looking for software developers, they always look at your GitHub profile. And if you have all those green dots, the recruiters are going to know, hey, this person knows his stuff. This person's been coding all his life. His GitHub commit history is really great. So you really want to get those green dots. So in light of those, contributing to any GitHub repository is perfectly fine. As long as you get the green dot, you're totally fine. But when it comes to getting hired, you want to have at least one big open source project that you are contributing to. And I'll teach you guys exactly how you can find one of those in a later slide. Yeah. So one other thing that you can do in order to contribute is that you can contribute to libraries or frameworks that your own personal projects depend on. For example, if you're using React to build something, you can contribute to React as well. You can find the documents out there, you can read the documents, you can start contributing to making React a better thing, right? So having those libraries in your resume and making sure recruiters know that you contributed to the development of those libraries will bring your resume to the next level. The reason is when it comes to recruiters, right, they get about 100 to 1,000 different resumes for each role that is there. And if your resume is not going to stand out from everything else, that's just going to get tossed out, right? So one way you can make your resume stand out is by contributing to these libraries, which pretty much everyone knows. So you can essentially contribute. Once it gets approved, you can showcase your GitHub profile that says you have contributed to things like React. So those are the two places that I would recommend you contribute to. So how exactly can you contribute? What can you contribute to these projects? Now, if you are a complete beginner and if you're just transitioning into this industry and you're not too confident about your code, you do not need to be worried, because there are two different ways you can contribute. There are non-code related contributions that you can make and code related contributions that you can make. The first one that I want to talk to you about is a unrelated thing to coding, and that is going to be documentation, right? So every open source project is going to have a lot of documentation, and I mean a lot. So what you can do is you can go to those open source projects, find the documentation, see if there are any available places where you can contribute to those documentation, you can actually start contributing to the documentation. And the best thing about that is even contributing to documentation still counts. GitHub's profile in GitHub, your profile is still going to show that you were a contributor to these projects. And the same way, you can showcase that and highlight it on your resumes as well. So just because you're not a master in coding yet, you can still start contributing to open source projects using documentation. Now, on the flip side, the most common place where you want to contribute to, or the most common way you want to contribute to, is going to be code. Now, code is where you essentially help fix bugs, implement new features, and optimize existing code. So it's pretty self-explanatory. What you want to do is identify the code base, then figure out how you can better optimize it. Or if not, they'll have bug reports and everything. You'll be able to find different issues that they have, and you can start fixing those issues and then submitting those as your own contributions, right? So next, one thing that's less popular and less known by the community is design contributions. You can also contribute to design. So for example, if you're really good at prototyping, you can contribute that way. That's also something that you can do in order to get your name up on those contributors list for those open source projects, because every open source project, one way or another, will have a UI or a user experience, right? So if you find a gap in the user experience or even the UI, you can just let them know, hey, there's this gap and I recommend you fix it using this. Here's all the resources. You can contribute using those methods. Now, apart from that, you can also do testing contributions. So the bigger the project, there will be test cases that they want to use to test their applications. You can actually start writing your own test cases and submit it to them as test cases for testing their application. So that is also something that will get you on the contributors list. And finally, something related to code contributions is issues. Now on GitHub, you will have a separate tab on each repository that is specially dedicated to issues. And that's where the owners of the repository can list out issues that are there that they don't have the power to fix, but they want the community to someday help and fix them. And in those cases, you can actually find certain issues that have the tag called good first issue. Now, these are issues that beginners or anyone essentially getting into this industry can help fix. So if you're new to contributing to open source projects, I recommend you go find a bunch of issues that are tagged good first issues and start fixing those issues and then getting your commit history great and getting those green dots I mentioned before, right? Now, when it comes to the best practices of contributing, this is going to be really important. The reason is, you can contribute in many different ways, but there is an industry standard on how you want to make contributions. Now, if you're contributing to a personal project, then you don't necessarily need to follow these principles, but the purpose of today's contributing is to get hired, right? So whatever contribution you make, chances are a recruiter is going to be looking at it. So you want to be able to showcase how professional you are and employ the industry standards, the best practices used for contributing. So these next few slides are going to be really important if you are planning to use these to actually get hired in the end, right? So first, let's talk about what you need to do before you contribute. There's a few things that you need to know. And it always start with reading the documentation. That is paramount. Before you start contributing, before you even clone the repository, always head on over to the readme.md file and read the entire thing, because that is your single source of truth for the entire project. It'll have all the details you need on how to set up the project, run the project, test the project, everything. So it's really important that you read that file. That's going to be your first step. Now, apart from that, you sometimes might even find a contributions.md file. Now, this is not the case for all open source projects. If the contributions.md file is not present, that means everything that's in the contributions.md file is in the readme.md file. So you don't need to be afraid to start contributing to those, right? So contributions.md file will outline every single step you want to take in order to contribute to that project. So this is really important, because if you don't follow these steps, chances are your code is going to get rejected, and that's just the truth of it. So the first thing you do, I repeat again, readme.md and contributions.md, just read the files. Once you've done that, once you've got that out of the way, it's time to fork and clone the repository, so that way you have your own working copy of the latest code. After you've done that, you want to start a separate branch. Never push your code to main right off the bat, and that is industry best practice, right? You want to keep your main branch as clean as possible, and you want to start coding your new features in its own separate branch, right? So for example, if you want to make a login feature, you create a branch called login feature, and you start coding in that branch. And only once you've done coding, done the testing and all of that, you merge those two branches together using what we call a PR, or a pull request. We'll talk about that in a little bit, right? So those are the first 3 steps you want to follow before making your contributions, right? So that's just setting up the grounds for your contributions. So now let's talk about what you need to do when you're contributing. The first thing is start with small contributions, and this is something that I see many people messing up, right? So when it comes to those green dots that I mentioned, that is directly tied to the number of contributions you make on GitHub, and not the size of the contributions you make on GitHub. So since you're trying to get hired using GitHub and open source contribution, it's important that you increase the number of contributions you make rather than the size of the contributions you make, right? So for example, imagine 2 people, developer A, developer B. Developer A contributes 50 lines of code, right? But he commits it in one go, right? He commits it in one go. Developer A, 50 lines, 1 commit. Then we have developer B, same 50 line of code, but he uses 5 different commits to submit the same code. So each commit will have 10 different lines of code. Now, if you look at the 2 green dots that those 2 developers get, developer A is going to get a very light green dot because he only made 1 contribution. But developer B, on the other hand, is going to get a full dark green dot because he made 5 contributions. So this is what we call atomic contributions. You want to make atomic contributions, and because of that, I always recommend, whenever you create a function, whenever you create a feature, whenever you fix a bug, always commit. Always commit and send that as a contribution, right? So don't bundle up everything together and send it over as one giant contribution. That kills your green dots when it comes to GitHub. The next thing, and this is also a very important thing that many people overlook, and that is code style. So every different open source project will have its own style of coding, and it's really important that you follow those styles, because if you don't, the chances are your code is going to get rejected. And the reason is, the people who are managing these repositories, they want the code to be consistent across all versions. So it's really important you follow the style. And this ties back to what I said earlier. The coding style and everything will be mentioned in the readme.md file. So you will understand exactly how it is you want to be writing the code. So that's why it's really important you read those files. When it comes to any project, documentation is a really strong place to start. Then finally, commit messages. This is paramount. When you make a commit message, you want to make it clear as possible, right? For example, imagine you made 5 different functions, pretty small functions. You put that into one commit, and you commit it saying created 5 functions. That's the commit message you put. That is not descriptive, right? So for example, a person reviewing your commit history won't know what those 5 commits are. You have to go into the code itself to then study the code and understand what those functions or features are. So instead, what you want to do is you want to say created login feature, created update user feature, all of those. Mention the name of the feature that you're doing and then commit that using the message. And if you're fixing a bug, bugs usually come with an ID or a unique identifier for each different bug. You want to have that included in the commit message, as well as the name of the bug, right? So these three things are really important to follow when you are committing and contributing. Now, this is not just for getting hired, even for your personal projects on GitHub. Just make sure you follow these things, because this is how it's done in a professional level, and this is what is considered the best practice by industry masters. Finally, after you are finished contributing, what you want to do is submit a PR or a pull request. So a pull request on GitHub is how people will compare two different bases of code, for example, the main branch to your feature branch or your bug fix branch, and they will compare the changes and they will see, hey, this works or this doesn't work. And if it works, they'll approve the changes, making you an official contributor of the project. If not, what they're going to do is reject it. Now, once you submit your pull request for your code, be patient. That's it. Just be patient and be respectful. Code reviews, they take time. It's not something that happen instantly, right? It's going to take a few weeks, it's going to take a few months. That happens. Usually it's going to take around 3 to maybe 6 weeks for people to get back to you on your pull request, because that's just how it is. So it's really important that you are patient and be respectful. So maybe after 3 weeks, if you haven't heard back from them, you can drop them an email saying, hey, I made this contribution where I fixed all of these, then explain to them like, hey, this is what I did. Then you can just send it after 3 weeks and see what happens. Apart from that, once you submit the PR, it's important that you let them know you submitted a PR, right? So what you want to do is connect with one of the developers in whatever company you're contributing to, and connect with them and say, hey, I've looked at your open source code. I see these improvements that can be made. I submitted a PR. Would you mind taking a look at it? Just send them a message like that and then forget about it. Don't bug them about it. Don't be a pain. Like, don't annoy them. Just send them one message and that's perfectly fine, right? So if you don't hear back from them, chances are you just got rejected and you just move on to the next one. So with all of that being said, is it worth it going through all of this trouble, like contributing, writing code, submitting all of that? Is it really worth it? The answer is yes. It's worth it. We've seen the results here at Metana. Most of our students who have tried this strategy, it has worked. If you don't get hired, you're going to build a really great network of developers using this method. And later down the line, you can transform one of those connections into a recruitment opportunity. So it's essentially a win-win situation. Because hey, even if your code gets rejected, they're still going to reach out to you and say, hey, this is why we didn't approve your code. Just keep an eye out for these, and you can build a conversation with those people and add them to your network. That's one of the other reasons why this approach is really strong. It's essentially a win-win situation. Now, finally, I want to talk to you about a different method you can use to get hired in this industry. So the standard way people approach getting hired in this industry is applying to every single job post that they have. What I recommend is a little bit smarter approach, right? So what we call this is sniping versus mass applying. What I recommend is, rather than applying to every different company you see, you want to target out companies that have open source projects going on. Now, once you have that list of companies that have open source projects, you want to start contributing to those projects, right? So you want to study the code base, read the documentation, and then be like, oh, this is how I can help. Once you do that, connect with some developers in those companies, right? Don't connect to recruiters in those companies, because chances are those people don't look at the PR request. The development team is what looks at the PR request. So you want to connect with the developer and be like, hey man, I saw your company's open source project. I thought it was really interesting. I thought you can improve it using these methods, and I just submitted a PR. Just take a look and let me know what you think about my code. Just a simple message like that. Just be human about it, and that's what you want to do. So once you do that, after like a month or two of contributing, you can slowly say, hey, I really enjoy working on your project. Do you guys have a position open where I can maybe be a permanent part of the team? And the thing is, students who have used this strategy have actually got a lot of results. And this, in my opinion, is much better than applying on a mass scale, because one, you're building your network, right, doing this. And then the other thing is, you're actually going to get hired in these places using a meaningful connection, right? You're not going to be another face in all the pool of applications, right? They know that, oh, this is the guy who's been contributing to our project for like a month. So that is going to give you the edge over all the other applications that they're going to get. So that is what I recommend people use in order to get like better and smarter results when it comes to applying to jobs out there. So that essentially is what I wanted to talk about. So I do want to say thanks for anyone who joined the meeting, and that's going to be the end of it. And we have a bunch of other webinars that we have planned, but this has been a really great webinar. Essentially, so yeah, that's about it. So I will see you guys in the next one.